Great, you're good to go. All right, well, good afternoon, and we're going to go to our next class. And today we will be focusing on organizational capability and your project staffing. And these are key. Even though they're not the largest section of your proposal or even the section that has the most points, this is the one section where you should be able to get the maximum amount of points. And it's mainly because you're only talking about yourself. And no one knows your organization better than you do. So this is a section where you really should not give up any points. But it's a section where numerous organizations and writers just bleed out points because they don't know the specific things they need to include. Well, we're going to talk about those today. We're also going to look at basic project management because you're going to have to talk about how you're going to manage and staff this program. Also, how to effectively complete a management capability statement and understand how to complete a statement of your organizational capacity. And those two are slightly different. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let's talk about overall project planning. And we're asking, what do we plan? Well, there's four basic things: the project work, the resources in the organization, the money, and the information systems. And when you do your organizational capability section, you have to talk about how you're going to plan and manage all of these aspects. How you will plan and manage and staff the project, how you will handle and manage the organizational resources as well as the staff and organizations, how you will manage the resources or the funding, and how you will plan and manage the information system, data collection, information storage, how you will ensure confidentiality. These are the things that we're talking about, and they absolutely must be included in your organizational capacity section in detail. I want you to keep in mind three project frenemies that you're going to have on any project. And again, you have to determine which one of these areas are important to you and what's important to your funder, and you want to match. The three areas tend to be what we call technical performance, cost standards, and time targets, or basically scope, cost, and time. Now, some folks will say quality. I don't tend to use the word quality in terms of talking about technical performance, mainly because no one's ever going to say we run a raggedy program. That's not there. When I'm talking about scope, I tend to talk about what you can offer through this project or this intervention. If you increase the scope, consider it almost as increasing the bells and whistles. You can do things that you may not be able to have done before, where I may have just, I want to do a tutoring program. Well, if I can increase the scope, well, I can do tutoring, I can add mentoring, we can be computer based, we can be individual learn, we can do the whole gamut. Basically, I can offer you more. And we're talking about technical performance and scope. We're basically saying I can do more things on this project or include more bells and whistles. Cost is exactly what it sounds like. Either I'm telling the funder I'm going to save you money, or either let you know that money is not an issue for me. And the last one is time. Every project, and think about it as a triangle with scope at the top, cost and time at the bottom. Any of these that you emphasize on a project is going to force a constraint on the other two. For example, if I'm saying I want strong technical performance, I want a high quality program that offers a range of services and activities. Well, guess what? It's going to cost more and it's going to take more time to put this together. But let's say we have a funder that says, look, cost is what I'm most concerned about. Then you realize in terms of scope, you're not going to get the full range of activities. Or I may have to spend more. I mean, excuse me, if I'm saving money, I won't have as much time because I have to do it quickly because I don't have the resources to pay people over a period of time. Or if folks say, I need this quickly, we're more concerned about you getting this intervention up and getting it done. Then you understand because I'm moving quickly, we may not get the same scope and it may cost more because I have to work faster, which means I need to bring more people on board and expend more resources. So again, Keeping in mind for every project, you know the project frenemies. Which one will be your focus and which one is important to your funder? Because whichever one it is, that's what you highlight. You highlight your scope and all the bells and whistles you can offer, or you highlight how this is cost effective and how you're saving that funder money or maximizing their dollars, or you're saying in terms of time, we move quickly because speed is of the essence. When you talk about your organizational capability, there's two basic things we're looking at. The first one is your accomplishments, your track record, and your characteristics. The second part are the qualities that demonstrate to the funder that you are qualified to take this project. One is your history. The second part is what you can do now and why you are what we like to call the organization of choice. And you have to provide sufficient detail in both of these areas. And both areas must be included in this section. When we talk about your organizational capability, we're looking at your track record. Basically, you're providing confidence that your agency is programmatically sound, you're administratively strong, and you're qualified to address the needs and the problems in an effective, fiscally responsible manner. And all of those have to be demonstrated. That you run sound programs, that you have strong management or administrative oversight, you actually know how to address these issues, and you can manage the dollars and the resources in a fiscally responsible way. The part where most organizations fall short is they don't provide quantitative evidence of what you've done. They don't provide the numbers. Well, let me clarify. Many of a proposal writer or organization will talk about the numbers of individuals that they have served, and that's important. But how well did you serve them? It's kind of we call the McDonald's of things, and no disrespect to McDonald's, but it's you can say you serve 500 people, but if you serve 500 people importantly, why should a funder be impressed? Well, here's the thing: if you didn't tell them how well you serve them, they don't know, and a funder is not going to guess. So if you work with 500 folks, you may want to say something such as 500 individuals improve their reading level skills by such and such a measure, or their scores on standardized tests increased, or these are kids that were on the verge of they were truant and were dropping out. Now they successfully completed high school. You want to show an outcome, and you want to show it quantitatively. This is key, and many organization leaves this part out. When you're looking at the components of your organizational capability, there's about 7 or so things you want to include. The first one is your agency mission. And even if you mentioned it in your executive summary or your program narrative, you want to mention it again here. And again, this is what is the purpose for your organization? Why do you exist in the first place? And what are you trying to accomplish? That leads right into the history of your organization. And this is key because it shows that you're growing. It begins to show that you're sustainable. If you've been around for the last 10 years, well, then they're going to think, well, they've been around this long. I think they may know a little something about what they're doing or how to stay in operation. We're not saying that's the end all be all, because you can be relatively new and you can still talk about how you went from program concept or organization concept to actually rolling up your sleeves and getting it done and how you got it done. Even if you don't have funding history, you may be completely volunteer run, but it's showing how you got started, why you got started, where. It's showing your commitment, and it's determining whether or not your focus has changed or if you've been consistent with the work that you've been doing. But more importantly, this sec part shows growth. So you want to talk about when you got started, why you got started, and how you've been operating up to this point. Then finally, your organizational resources. And again, your funding track record if you have it, and if not, your human resource record. It can be something as simple as you may start with volunteers and now you've hired 3 people. You want to mention that because it's showing growth. It's showing that you're formalizing. If you have 15 staff, you want to say so. If you have 100 volunteers, you want to say so. You want to talk about what your budget is or what type of in-kind support you have. Basically, you want to show all the things you bring to bear, whether it's cash, staff, volunteers, in-kind donations, whatever it may be, partnerships. You want to mention it here. And that goes next to your community support and recognition. And this is how you regard it. If you won any awards or your involvement in this community. And again, this is key because as they look at a specific target population, you can say, well, we've been working with this population. And not only have we been working with them, we do a pretty good job. They know us, they support us, they want us there, and we can get to them. Next, you're going to highlight your collaborations and your linkages. And here's where a lot of organizations go wrong. They'll mention the name of the organizations. They'll even mention that they have them as a partner, but they don't list out specifically what that partner organization does. It does me no good to know that you work with the Huckleberry Community Services if I don't know as a funder what they're bringing to the table. So if they're providing youth mentoring, say so. If they're providing transportation, say that. But if you list the partner, you need to list what specifically they're doing on this project and how many participants they're willing to work with. And ideally, you have an MOU or MOA attached to that. So for every partner, there's a memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of agreement that shows that they have shown on paper they're doing exactly what you said they would do in this proposal. The next part is the agency program and track records. And again, this is a quantitative overview of your programs and their effects. You need both. You want to talk about the programs, the number of individuals that have come through those programs, and more importantly, what has been the benefit or the outcome of their participation. And you want to list this in terms of numbers. It does no good to talk about all the programs you have if you don't talk about the number of folks you served in those programs and what their outcomes are or were. So be sure to do so. And the last part is just talking about your agency strengths. And this kind of wraps everything up in a nice bow. It's really focusing on what makes you particularly suited for this project. And again, this is going to be RFP specific or funder specific. It's more or less saying, again, why you are the organization of choice. If you do this well, then you don't even have to say anything negative about any other agency. It just becomes apparent to the funder, why would I go with anybody else? They are the organization that should be doing this. And that's the kind of compelling case that you want to make. There are certain documents, and a lot of times this will go in the attachment or appendix section that will highlight some of these aspects of your organizational capability. And these are going to be things such as a letter of support, or again, or an MOU or MOA. And understand a letter of support is different from a memorandum of understanding or agreement. A letter of support simply says, people think that your project is a good idea. They support it. It doesn't mean they're going to do anything. It doesn't mean they're going to help. It just means that they think it's a good move for the area. And this is important because if you can get a letter of support from community members or a resident association or a tenant association or a community group that's basically showing that, hey, we have access to the population we're targeting and they want to work with us, it strengthens your project. Or you get an ANC or a council member who says this will be good for my ward or my particular area, then it strengthens your argument. But it's not the same as an MOU or MOA, which again says, as an organization, another organization has committed to working with you on this project. And here's specifically what they will do and how many individuals they will work with. Copies of awards and recognitions are good. Every funder is not going to want them. If they don't request them, then you just mention them in your section. Same thing with newspaper or web articles. Some funders will tell you point blank, do not send these to us. So only send them if the funder requests them. Everyone, however, is going to want a listing of your board of directors and their affiliations. And it's important not just to list the name of your board of directors, but their affiliations, and usually people want where they're employed at, and that address or contact information. You also want to include resumes, and ideally in a standardized format, an annual report if you have them, an audited statement if your organization meets that financial threshold. The threshold used to be $250,000. I think it has increased since then. But the bottom line, if you make that much in revenue, you need an audited statement that's done by a certified public accountant, independent of the firm that's handling your accounting right now. Also, they're going to be looking for your 501c3 determination letter. If for some reason you don't have an audited statement or you don't meet the threshold, they'll accept a 990 in replacement of that. Your staffing plan, which is the next part. And again, some people may call this the management plan or the key personnel section. And it's going to basically convey three things: how are you going to staff the project, who this personnel is going to be, and then how you will recruit, train, supervise, and evaluate the staff. You need to include all of these things in this section because it's showing that you got the best people who are highly qualified to successfully conduct this work. And now it's just saying who they are, what they're going to do, how you're going to find them, how you train them, and they're clear on who's involved. If you've identified your staff, then here's some things that you may want to mention in the section. How important this particular staff is to the overall success of this project. What are the positions? Who are they? What type of effort will they contribute? Where I'm talking about their percentage of time. Are they part-time? Are they full-time? Are they half-time? Quarter-time? 10% of the time? And there's a number you should sear in your head. It is 2080. Again, 2080. These are the number of billable hours in a year for most projects. So a full-time employee will usually work 2,080 hours. Any percentage of employment is a percentage of that 2,080. If they're half-time, they've worked 1,040 hours. If they're work 10%, then it's 208 hours. But again, you want to let them know how much time will they spend on this project. What are the responsibilities? What is the specific background of this individual that qualifies them to work on this project? And how does the staff you select distinguish your firm or benefit the customer? Also, what skills do they bring to the table? And what depth of staffing is available within your organization? Who else is available that can help support this project? These are things you want to mention if you've identified staff. If you've not, then you want to talk about the job description, how you're going to recruit them, how you will train them and orient them to your organization, how you will supervise them, how you're going to conduct your staff performance, how you will replace them if you lose them, if you plan to hire any of the target population or the consumers or the clients, or in some instances, and this tends to be more on the rare side, if there was an organization that held the contract or grant before you held it, and the funder may say, we like some of their staff members, we want to retain them, then what's your plan to hire that incumbent staff? In terms of putting together a job description, here's a good overall format that you want to use. And again, it's just a standardized format that generally answers all the questions they're looking for, and you can use this consistently. The job title, who they report to, the date this position was created or amended, and the Federal Labor Standards Act classification. Whether it's white collar exempt, whether they're hourly, you want to state that. The purpose of this job, the duties, the education required, the experience necessary, and who this was approved by. And generally that's going to be the board of directors, sometimes the executive director. But basically, this is a standard format that you'd want to have for a job description. If you have identified the person, then following this sample format for a resume will make your life so much easier. One, standardized formats are easier to read because as reviewers look at the proposals or look at the resumes, all of the information is in the same place. It also helps you out because even though you may need to spend some time up front having your staff reformat or rewrite their resumes, once you have them, then it becomes easier for you to write. The first part is a bio, which is just their overall accomplishments, and it also shows how they may be a fit for this project in particular. That's going to be the first thing that a person reads, and hopefully it will answer all their questions or entice them to look further into the resume. Then you go with the experience, their education or training, the skills, the activities, any awards or any memberships they may have. And again, each of these reflects something different. The skills, again, show other things they may bring to the table. If you're doing a parenting program, it's nice to know that they've been certified as a parent educator. Or if they're a social worker, now you can show that they're licensed or they've gone through specific training. The activities are things they're involved with. And sometimes that can, again, strengthen their case. If we're doing youth mentoring and the person's activity is they coach, then hey, it looks like this person, this is really their thing and what they're involved in. Same thing with awards. Award just shows that they're very good at what they do. And sometimes a professional association helps out as well because they like to see things such as the social workers involved with the National Association of Social Workers or the National Association of Black Social Workers or Hispanic Social Workers, etc. So these are the kind of things that you would include in a resume. Keep in mind a few things. You always want to describe in detail, particularly the experience and qualifications of the project director, as well as the key staff. It's one thing to say, we've hired this director. It's a different thing to say, we've hired this director who has 10 years of experience in leading this kind of project and 20 years in working with this population. Who becomes more impressive? The second one, obviously. And you talk about each member such as that. Describe their roles and responsibilities. And again, this is based on the project activities that you laid out. If they're going to be staffing the project, what will they be doing? Will they be running after the sessions? Will they be supervising? And you're generally going to ask for an organizational chart. And again, the chart is going to show the lines of accountability in your structure. You also want to make sure in this section, you mention your record keeping, your overall record keeping, and your management information systems. Again, it's showing that you've taken measures to manage and safeguard financial resources and sensitive information and records. For example, fiscally, I want to know who's the person that's managing the money. Is it a staff person with 20 years experience? Is it a bookkeeper supported by a certified public accounting that reconciles your books on a monthly basis? What type of financial software are you using? Are you using QuickBook, Peachtree, something else? Either way, I want to know how the money is accounted for and who's responsible for it. Same thing with record keeping. How do you keep your records? Where do you keep your records? How do you store them? Who has access to them? What type of safeguards are in place? Are your files in a locked room in a locked file cabinet? Same thing with your MIS systems. Who has access to the information? How is it stored? When is it updated? Is it backed up? Are there firewalls? These are the kind of things you want to explain in this section so an individual or a funder is comfortable with entrusting not only their financial resources to you, but the clients or participants' information. And then, are there any additional resources that you will have that will support the project? And you'd want to mention them here as well. Also, include who your partners are and how you're going to communicate with them. And again, this is particularly if you did not include them in the narrative, and hopefully you did. But it's also if you're going to refer to them. Is it a paper referral? Are you going to make a phone call and then check later? You want to explain these. You also want to talk about how you're going to communicate to your funders in what format. Most funders are going to want a programmatic and a financial report, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or annual. And if you look in the RFP, they will generally list it out there. So comb through the RFP, see what they're looking for, and make sure you communicate to them how you will address that in this section. Also, they're going to tend to look for project sustainability as well, or organizational sustainability. Well, you're going to describe how you're going to maintain and sustain this program once the funding has been exhausted. And it's not sufficient to say, well, we'll look for additional funding. You got to be specific. If you are going to look for additional funding, what funders are you targeting? How much will you be looking for? Are you also going to be looking at donors? But you have to be specific because the days of, well, we'll just write additional grants are not sufficient anymore. I already told you about the other part in terms of it's not sufficient just to mention numbers you serve, but mention the outcomes and the impacts. And always, always, always in this section, address cultural competency in detail. Even if the RFP did not specifically ask you a question about cultural competency, assume it's going to be scored. I've been through many review sessions where the question of cultural competency may not have been directly placed in the RFP, but it was still scored in the overall project. So please, and it's not enough to say, well, we're going to use a language line or we hire somebody that speaks this one language. Diversity and cultural competency goes along a range of issues. We're talking about gender, race, sexual orientation, income level, educational level, whether you're working with folks with a disability or a challenge. These are the kind of things you want to say, we've addressed how we're going to deal with this. We have a training in place. We look at this annually, whatever it is. You want to get in detail and explain how you address cultural competency. And we're not only talking about language when we talk about cultural competency. Are there any questions? Well, we thank you for your time. And again, we'll see you next week. And we look forward to working with you. Happy grant seeking.